My name is Jeni Shaw. I'm the claims director at Pinnacle Assurance. I've been there about 16 years. And this is Christine Sims. She's our medical case management director. Incredible 30 years of nursing experience and 10 plus years at Pinnacle now. So very excited to present to you on this topic. It's a topic that's near and dear to our hearts. And we are really trying to move the industry forward in this manner. So let's go ahead and get going. So we put questionnaires on not all the tables, lots of the tables. If you could find one, grab one. We put pens out there. If there's one near you. And we're gonna give you about 3-4 minutes to just go through those first 2 pages, circle the category, or circle the answer in each category that best represents where you're at right now. All right, if everybody's about finished up, if not, you can keep going. We'll go ahead and move on.
Okay, so what do we mean by a biopsychosocial approach? This is a model that was developed back in 1977 by Dr. George Engel. It is a holistic approach to treating people for both psychological problems along with their medical conditions. The thought is that the path to illness and wellness develops through a complex interaction of biologic, psychological, and social factors. So when we think of biological, this is your genetics, your gender, any medical conditions you may have, any medications you are on. These all impact you from a biologic standpoint. When we think psychological, again, you think that mental health, anxiety, depression, bipolar, any of those mental health illnesses, but it also includes your behavior, your personality, your learning and memory, your coping skills, your self-esteem and emotions. And then when we think of social, these are your relationships, your interpersonals, whether it's with your family, your friends, your coworkers. What does your social support system look like? What is your financial well-being, your work, home life, education, and just what happens in society as a whole and how that impacts you, whether it's direct or indirectly. So in other words, you look at the whole person. We're very complex individuals, and you just try to understand how all those internal and external factors impact not only your health and your healing, but also your day-to-day interactions and your overall wellness. As a nurse, I was trained in this approach, used it all the time when I worked in geriatrics and oncology and hospice. Obviously, you didn't just focus on someone who had cancer. You had to look at the person as a whole, what their support system looked like, and all of those biologic, psychologic, and social factors. However, when I came to the work comp world, we focus on the injury. You don't look at the whole person. Psychologic and social issues, we don't touch that. That's not related. And as a manager or a director, with our employees, they're expected to leave their personal life at home and not bring it to work, or so we think. So what Jeni and I are going to do is just kind of talk you through how should you apply this approach to the workplace, how you should use it to interact with your employees, but also to help you understand how it impacts you as a manager and individually and how you show up both in your personal and professional life.
Okay. So because I hate standing in front of people and talking, we're a little interactive here, so we have one more kind of activity for you. So there's a blank sheet of paper at the back of that questionnaire that you've filled out. If you could take a couple minutes and just jot down all of the things that have caused stress in your life since the beginning of 2020. That's exactly where we're going. Yeah, just one piece of paper. I'm only giving you 3 minutes, so. So I'm sure number one on everybody's list is public speaking. It was definitely on mine this week, but moving to your list, who has more than 5 things written down? Okay, most of the group. More than 10? 15? All right, you guys are doing really good. Let's take a look at the list that Chris and I came up with for our lives over the last couple of years, just kind of off the top of our heads. Do any of your lists look anything like this? Yeah, this is a great representation of what your employees are going through on a daily basis, right? One or more of these things is affecting almost everyone that works in our buildings, as employees, as coworkers from a day-to-day basis. So your employees are carrying these things when they come to work every day, regardless of whether they're letting you know that they're bringing them in or not.
And if this list doesn't convince you that we need to look further into what impacts our employees and ourselves, maybe some of these statistics will. So, Mental Health of America was established, it's a nonprofit that was established back in 1909. It is the nation's leading nonprofit dedicated solely to mental health. In their 2022 report, nearly 50 million, or close to 20% of American adults experienced a mental illness. More than half of them did not receive treatment. Almost 25% of those report inability to access treatment for mental health issues. This number has not declined since 2011. Where do you think Colorado ranks, or is it up there?
It's up there.
Oh, darn. So we are 51st. Just to put it in perspective, in 2020, we ranked 37th, and in 2021, we were 48th. So we are declining. What that means is, overall, adults in Colorado have a higher prevalence of some form of mental illness. This is obviously those mental health issues like anxiety, depression, but it also includes substance abuse and suicidal ideation or thought. And we also have lower rates of access to care and treatment. If we break it down into those three different buckets, mental illness, the national average is about 20%. Colorado is ranked 46th in the nation, we're about 24%. Substance abuse, the national average is close to 8%, and in Colorado, we are about 12. We are ranked 50th in the nation. There are 5 deaths a day in Colorado related to alcohol abuse. Suicidal thought. National average is a little over 4.5%. This has increased every year since 2011, and in Colorado, we're sitting a little above 5.5 at 44th in the nation. So if you break it down, what does that look like for you? Well, think about, based on these statistics, for every 100 employees that you have, 24 have some form of mental illness, 12 have a substance abuse issue, and 6 have thought about or attempted suicide. And that is just adults. For our youth, 15% experienced a major depressive episode in the past year, and over 60% of them are, even in states with the greatest access to care, have not received treatment. So while you think, oh, well, they're young, that doesn't apply to my business, remember, they are your future employees. Let's talk about our workforce. What does that look like? According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, employment of workers 65 and older has grown by 117% in a span of 20 years. By 2024, it's projected that 1 out of 4 workers will be 55 and older. They are the fastest growing demographic of working Americans. So while I fit into this category, technically, what do older workers bring to the workforce? Well, we have strong work ethic, we're dedicated, we have experience, but we also bring health and social issues. Even our healthiest older adults, just by the course of natural aging, are exposed to hypertension and cardiac issues, diabetes, arthritis, musculoskeletal issues. They could have some cognitive issues. They may be taking care of aging parents or significant others or children, grandchildren. They could be preparing for retirement or financially can't retire. That's why they're working. Obesity. 1 out of every 3 Americans is obese. It's defined as a BMI over 30. And according to the CDC, the rate of obesity has increased from 31% to 42% in the past 20 years in America and continues to climb. So where do you think Colorado falls in the obesity ranking? Oh, was it up there? Damn. It is. We are actually, the good news, we are one of the 3 lowest states in the nation. However, we are still at 24%. That number climbs every year. Obesity increases, for most of you, you know, risk of heart disease, diabetes, those joint issues. And obesity costs an employer $4,000 a year in healthcare and related costs per employee. So go back to your 100 employees, you are paying almost $100,000 a year if you have 24 employees that are obese.
Okay, so how does this relate directly to your bottom line? The National Safety Council estimates that employers spend about $15,000 per year per employee that have untreated mental health issues. This is through a mix of turnover and productivity issues, things like that. So if you do the math, that same 100 employees Chris was talking about, we know that 1 in 4 adults has some sort of mental health issue. That is costing you, if you have 100 employees, over $370,000 a year. So this really isn't something that you can afford to not take action on. In a study from BYU, it was discovered that adults with unhealthy diets are 66% more likely to have decreased productivity. Health-related productivity loss is 77% of all productivity loss that goes on in your businesses from day to day. Employers are spending 2 to 3 times more annually in healthcare expenses for those workers. Healthcare costs are significantly increased when you consider the fact that anxiety and depression has a direct link to cardiovascular and metabolic issues. And then in another study, they determined that more than a third of Americans have left a job because of that job's impact on their mental health. So we can't afford to sit still and not do something to try to improve these costs, especially in public entities, in school districts, where you have a budget that you are down to the bottom line every single year trying to figure out we're going to pull extra dollars for education and for resources and for safety. Every one of these dollars has a huge impact on you guys moving forwards. So this has been fun, right? Everybody's super excited they came?
All right, who needs a hug? Who needs 6 shots? Who needs 3 months of sleep? And who needs all 3? Come see Jeni afterwards. She'll buy the shots. Or at least she's buying them for me. Okay, so what do we do? Now that we know our employees and ourselves, we're bringing all this baggage, so to speak, to work with us. What do we do? So it starts at the top. It starts with management, and so it has to start with you. Get to know your employees. You have to know where they sit. Be sure that your managers are engaged with their employees. Dispel the myth that mental health is a stigma. We really have to get good with it. I don't think there's anybody in this room that at some point in time hasn't experienced some sort of emotional or mental stress, whether it lasted a day, a week, a month, years. We all go through some sort of mental health issue. So for me, I lead a team of about 34 nurses. If you don't know what nurses are like, one, they are probably the unhealthiest profession out there. We might be the most caring and trusted, but we are the most unhealthy. They are direct, they are sarcastic, they can be very assertive, and my team is very diverse. I have my nurses range in age from 23 to 78. I have men and women. And their needs are very different across the board. So while they all don't report directly into me, I do have a level of supervisors. I do meet with them once a quarter. It's one-on-one. It is their time, and it's informal. This shouldn't be when you meet with your employees. It shouldn't be to discuss a project or some work-related tasks that you want them to do. It shouldn't be their annual review. This should be time for them to kind of have just space with you. Be present and actively listen to them. Don't look at your phone. Don't look at your emails. I know it's hard as managers. We always want to like multitask. You hear that little pop-up and you kind of glance over at your screen. But don't do that. Make sure you're actively listening. It's very hard, but there's a lot of benefits to it. One, and first and foremost, it builds trust with your employees. If you really want to get to know them and you want them to trust you, this is the way to do it. It reduces misunderstandings and helps eliminate conflict. It encourages empathy, and it increases productivity as well as improve your business relationships and really just makes you an overall better leader. By getting to know your employees, it will help you identify when those potential issues may be bubbling to the surface. And then when you recognize those changes in their behavior and performance, you can let them know you care and guide them to the right resources. So we have a video around active listening. Hope you enjoy it.
First there was PlayStation, aka PS1. Then there's PS2, PS3, and now PS4. And that makes sense. You'd think after Xbox, there'd be Xbox 2. But no. Next came Xbox 360. And now, after 360, comes Xbox One. Why one? Maybe that's how many seconds of thought they put into naming it.
Can you get the butter, please?
You know, however, with the Xbox One, I can control my entire entertainment system using voice commands. Up until now, I've had to use Leonard.
Then get the other one. Pass the butter.
Hang on. I don't feel like you're taking this dilemma seriously.
Fine, Sheldon. You have my undivided attention.
Okay, now, the PS4 is more angular and sleek looking.
No way!
It's true. But the larger size of the Xbox One may keep it from overheating.
You wouldn't want your gaming system to overheat?
No, see, well, you absolutely would not. And furthermore, the Xbox One now comes with a Kinect included.
Included?
Yes. Not sold separately. Although the PS4 uses cool new GDDR5 RAM, while the Xbox One is still using the conventional DDR3 memory.
Why would they still be using DDR3? Are they nuts?
See, that's what I thought. But then they go and throw in an ES RAM buffer.
Whoa, wait a second. Who's they?
Xbox.
You're kidding!
No, I am not. And this ES RAM buffer should totally bridge the 100 gigabit per second bandwidth gap between the two RAM types.
This is a nightmare. How will you ever make a decision?
See, I don't know. What should I do?
Please pass the butter!
So now you know your employees. You can identify that potential issue. But now, how do you guide them to those resources? Remember, keep in mind, you are not to be their therapist, their counselor. That is not your job. You're there to listen and you're there to guide. Sometimes you may have difficulty starting that conversation or not knowing how, if you say something, you might be crossing a boundary. Keep it simple. You can open up with a statement that says, "It seems like you're not yourself lately. I'm just checking in." Or, "I've noticed some changes in your performance and was wondering how you're doing." An open-ended question like that, and if you've already built that trust with them, chances are they'll open up. They may not tell you everything that's going on and spill their guts, but they may just say, "I'm having some really personal issues at home," or, with family, or maybe they just want to vent about something that happened at work and they were afraid to say something. Sometimes what I find with my team, a lot of times, again, they're nurses, they just need to vent and kind of rant a little bit. Give them that safe space to do that without maybe labeling them as complainers or whatever. And then for those that may need more help or assistance, know what kind of resources your company has. It is not up to HR just to know what those resources are. Do you have an EAP for those mental health or professional issues that might come up? Do you have drug and alcohol resources? What about a formalized wellness program? We all spend a lot of time at work, whether we're working from home and remote or we're sitting in the office. And while we're all best intentioned, I'm going to go to the gym during my lunch hour, I'm going to take that walk, I'm going to eat healthy. We all know before you know it, it's 6 o'clock, you get home from work and a bowl of popcorn and a bottle of wine is dinner. Not that I would know from personal experience. Encourage your employees to take breaks throughout the day. Schedule it. Put it on your calendar. Do it for yourself. If you don't take care of yourself, you cannot take care of your employees. Kind of lead by that example. And then also keep an eye on just overall morale. I find it ebbs and flows. It could be just, a time of year when workload and stress, maybe there's projects or timelines and deadlines, and there's nothing you can do. The work has to get done. But knowing that it's an increased time of stress, make sure you're there more for your team. Find ways to encourage them, reward them, and always remember, I find, again, they're nurses, they're a little morbid. Humor is sometimes the best medicine. Use it. It can be a simple email with like a little meme or, a funny joke. I end my team meetings. Sometimes our team meetings get a little contentious, but it is always ended in some kind of humor or joke.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the other thing that I've tried to do with my team, I lead a team of basically claims experts at Pinnacle. It's their job to support all of the claim representatives that work for us. And when you really think about what a claims representative's job is, right? They spend all day, every day, trying to help people that are in some of the hardest and worst situations of their life, right? They're speaking on the phone to people with really serious injuries. They're in pain. They're not sure where their next paycheck is coming from. Maybe they have a great relationship with their employer. Maybe they don't. And then we're taking calls from attorneys and we're taking calls from medical providers and we're trying to navigate this world of balancing what we need to do just to get the best possible outcomes for our injured workers, right? That's our job. And everybody always jokes that you have to be a little crazy to want to do this job, right? But we try really hard to normalize getting assistance when you need it. My employees know that I use our EAP every single year. Whether I go for a couple visits to talk through work-related stress, or I go for a couple visits to talk through anything that might be going on at home. My husband and I take advantage of it fairly often to just do kind of maintenance checks on our marriage. We really need our employees to know that those resources are there for them to utilize. You wouldn't believe how many people still avoid employer-provided mental health resources because they feel like their employer is going to be sent a copy of the report, right, from the appointment. So just normalizing usage and encouraging your employees to do that is so important. And then to kind of move on to what is that going to do for you, right? What happens to the bottom line when our employees are getting the support that they need, when they're healthy and happy? Employees that are happy in their jobs are going to stay 4 times longer than an employee that's unhappy at work. And I don't know about your guys' situation, but we've had quite the issue with hiring over the last couple years. The labor market's short and turnover has been huge. And just the financial benefit of having an employee stay 4 times longer than their peer because we're providing the resources that they need to be healthy and happy in their roles, that's a huge bottom line impact. Then you look at the fact that healthy, happy employees are 20% more productive than their peers. 20%, that's a huge impact on your bottom line. Also, employees that are healthy, we got to throw in the work comp here somewhere, right? Employees that are healthy are far less likely to suffer an injury. And if they do, the injury is way less expensive. They get back to work sooner. They're motivated to get healthy. They have positive relationships that are encouraging them to get better. So you knew we had to circle back around at some point to workers' comp. So when you look at the workers' compensation perspective.
For those who handle work comp in here, think about the worst claim you ever had to deal with and what were the reasons that made it bad. I'm not talking those claims where there was a catastrophic injury and maybe someone was paralyzed or lost a limb or had a traumatic brain injury. We know the severity of those injuries. I'm talking about those minor injuries that all of a sudden escalated. They can't work, they're not getting better, multiple surgeries, those types of claims. Think of the factors that made it bad. Jeni and I, when I first came to Pinnacle, I was her assigned nurse. She was my claim rep, and the majority of the claims that she sent over to me really, truly were around delayed recovery, and what caused those delays were those psychological, social issues. It wasn't the severity of the injury, it was everything else wrapped into it that delayed all of that recovery. So we are working with a physician on a biopsychosocial pilot at Pinnacle, and he did a very extensive study on a very extensive review, of over 800 studies and concluded that psychosocial factors can predict delayed recovery 90% of the time with no information about the injury at all. That psychological testing was a better predictor of lumbar surgery outcomes than the MRI itself. And the World Health Organization found that in a study with over 25,000 patients, psychological factors were a better predictor of permanent disability than the actual severity of the injury. So Jeni's going to share with us a couple claims her and I worked to kind of prove this thought process.
Yeah, so several years ago, Chris and I were actually assigned mostly to school districts, and we handled a lot of the claims that were probably submitted by your peers and maybe even some of you in the past. The claims that always come to my mind when I'm thinking through this topic are two claims that we got in a very similar time period that came in pretty much back to back from the same school district. So we had one employee that was a school counselor. She was working with a special needs student, and a cushion hit her on the top of the head. No evidence of any sort of physical injury, no bumps, no bruises, no scrapes. ER just released her. She started complaining of some minor concussive type symptoms. On the other hand, we have a Spanish teacher that was coming home from a conference and hit a patch of ice coming down I-70 and went off the side of a mountain. Her car went down several hundred feet. She ended up basically an incomplete quadriplegic and spent a significant amount of time in Craig Hospital. So when you're looking at both of these cases from the get-go, you would assume that it would be pretty easy to pick out who was going to be back at work in a couple weeks and who was going to be fine versus who we may be looking at permanently in total disability for, right, down the road. Well, a year from the point in time that these claims came in, our school counselor was still out of work. She was complaining of dizziness, concussive symptoms. She had periods of fainting, just randomly in doctor's appointments. And when she tried to go back to work, she had a lot of fainting spells. And then we had our Spanish teacher who 1 year out was back in school teaching 3 classes a day, Spanish classes, had taken advantage of every single therapy that had been provided to her and had an incredible support system of the school that was really doing their best to lift her up and working with her on how to get her back into the workforce. Her husband was very supportive and caring and made sure she made it to every appointment. And she had 2 older children that were just, really invested in her recovery. So while you may think when an employee turns in a claim or you see somebody get injured, that you can predict pretty easily just by looking at what happened, the outcome of that claim, we have learned over and over and over again that the injury is not the best predictor of the outcome. So in a massive study done by Health Systems, they're an ancillary benefit provider. They do pharmacy and stuff like that, DME, they do a study every year on workers' compensation, and they do it by surveying workers' compensation professionals. Everyone from the CEO at insurance companies down to the frontline claims representatives. They found that overwhelmingly in the study from 2022, when a claims professional is asked what is going to be most impactful on a claim, it is comorbid conditions and mental health issues. Always. Has nothing to do with what the actual injury was when you look at the claim. You know, back when I was originally trained as a claim representative, a lot of the old school claim reps would talk about this like, this is horrible, but you call it like a spidey sense, right? Like you just have this feeling when you get on the phone with somebody that maybe it's not going to go really well, or they're giving you signals informally that they may not be in the best place to manage their recovery moving forward. And there wasn't a name to put to it. There wasn't, you know, we couldn't send it over to a nurse and be like, I don't know why, I just think something might not be right here, right? But this has given us a name and a definition and a set of tools to try and address what some of those issues were up front when we got those claims in. So as an industry, workers' compensation as a whole, we need to be doing all we can to pioneer a path to biopsychosocial claims handling. This is how we care for our employees. It's how we move the industry forward, and it's how you manage the limited resources that you have. So insurance practices, old school, right? Focus on the injured body part. It's a finger injury. We're going to look at the finger. We're only going to treat the finger. Don't talk about anything but the finger, right? We always stay away from social issues. We don't want to know. Please don't tell us. That's your business, not ours. Psych treatment. Psych treatment comes up in a medical note, and it's always like, ooh, bad, not related, you know, not authorized, move on. And even back not too long ago, we discussed these folks as claimants or even just assigned numbers, right? These are real people with real lives that are impacting what's going on with them in their health and recovery on a day-to-day basis.
So what are we doing at Pinnacle? We are getting ready to launch a biopsychosocial pilot. It will run for 18 months. It is multidiscipline, so it'll include claim representatives, nurses, and our return to work consultants all working together to basically identify potential risk for claims around psychosocial issues, get us involved early, do proactive management, work with our providers to get treatment. If we start identifying, maybe an injured worker needs a couple psych sessions. You know, an injury, while we might think it's somewhat minor, so you have a low back strain, but you don't, again, we don't know. Maybe them being out of work and financially they're limited, and so that causes added stress. Maybe they just don't cope well. Maybe, you know, life for them, they're just not in a good headspace. So we need to give them the tools and the resources so they can recover and get back to work and back to their lives.
Okay, so let's go ahead and hit the fun part here. Go back to those questionnaires that you filled out at the very beginning when we walked in, and go ahead and score those.
Okay, so if you scored 51 to 60, you are creating and you're in a flow, so you are open-hearted. If you're 41 to 50, I got this, and you're thriving. 31 to 40, something isn't right, but you're surviving. 21 to 30, I can't keep this up, and you're struggling. And 12 to 20, I can't survive this, and I'm in crisis. Read the different descriptions in each column. See how they apply to you, if they apply to you. And remember, this is just where you're at today. We are constantly adapting and changing, and you could take this next week and it could look completely different depending on what's going on for your life, in your life. It's again for your self-awareness. And based on the results, kind of take a moment to self-reflect. What are you doing or need to do to take care of yourself? If you scored high, what's working for you? What is it that you're doing and how are you going to maintain this? You know, we always do really well for a little while, taking care of ourselves, and then something happens and it just spirals us down into back to like bad habits or what have you, and it's always harder to get back on that horse again. So how do you maintain that level of maintenance? If you're scoring low, what's going on? What's going on at work and home? Maybe just even in your social environment. And what do you need to do to kind of improve some of that? Some areas you may score higher or lower. Again, it just depends on what's going on in your professional and personal life. And how really are you showing up at work and at home, or even in your social life? Ultimately, this is about taking care of yourself, because until you can take care of yourself, you can't take care of your employees. And I know as managers, I know for me, there are days you're wearing so many hats and you have so many balls in the air, and people are coming to you and you just don't have any more to give, and you really just want to tell people to get out, although we can't. So I'm going to leave you again. Remember, I said humor sometimes really is the best medicine. We're going to leave you with a little exercise, a couple tools in your tool belt for those days when you just can't take any more. You will have to participate. You can groan, but you do have to participate. So we'll roll the video and get started.
Get loose. You're going to stand up. It's going to be fun.
The coast. We're going to do a little research, because boy, NACU's all about research and education. And so what we're going to do here is, on the count of 3, if you're physically able, I'll ask you to stand. If not, do this from a seated position. But on the count of 3, stand, and then facing me, I want you to just take a deep breath, and then I want you to put the shape of a smile on your face. For the purpose of this research, this does not have to be a real smile, okay? I will give you one last set of instructions, and then you can sit down and groan loudly, and we will give you the reasons for this research. All right, count of 3. 1, 2, 3, stand. Take a deep breath. Now put the shape of a smile on your face. And I need to see teeth. I don't care if they're yours, okay? Now, last set of instructions. Turn and make eye contact with a victim to your left or right. And now sit down, groaning loudly. This is great. This is great. All right, 2 things here. 1, now everybody has a tool. If you had to leave right this minute, and please don't, but if you had to leave right now, you would have a tool. The next time you go back to work and you're sitting at your desk and you think, if one more person puts one more thing on my desk, I'm going to have to snatch them bald-headed. Now all you have to do is, facing your entryway, doorway, or hallway, sitting or standing, just do this. Because the next person to walk in and see you looking like this, they're going to know that now is not the time to bother you. You can play with your pain. You can be intentional. Doing little exercises. Here's another one that you may have known, you just forgot you knew it. Hold out your right thumb, forefinger about 1 inch apart. Close your left eye. Now find someone's head across the room. Bring your thumb and forefinger together and squish. They don't even know they were hit. Oh. It's amazing. It's amazing.
All right. Does everyone feel a little bit more prepared now to go out back into the world? Got some tools in your toolbox? Before we go, guys, I just want to make sure and mention, this isn't a public entities thing. This isn't a Pinnacle thing. This is an everybody thing. If your workplace, if your insurance company, whoever you're working with on a day-to-day basis is not moving forward with some type of model to address some of these issues, they definitely should be. So just food for thought as you go back out into what I hope is a very fabulous evening. But we do have, I think, a couple minutes here if anybody has any questions. Oh, perfect. You guys are awesome. Great. All right. Well, if you want any additional resources or any of the statistics that we provided earlier, you can head back out to the Pinnacle table. There's a one-page resource right there that'll give you a lot of the statistics and some of the points that we talked about to go ahead and take with you and move forward in making your place of employment a happy place for people to be. So thank you guys very much.